We're pleased to see that the Dow Jones Industrial Average broke through 25,000 for the first time ever today. The President's economic agenda of lower taxes, less regulation, and more opportunity for all is already paying off, and American families and workers are the big winners. With that in mind, we have a message from a special guest that I'd like to share with you. With that, I'll ask you to tune into the screens, and then I'll continue from there.
Thank you for being with us today. The historic tax cut I signed into law just 2 weeks ago before Christmas is already delivering major economic gains. Hundreds of thousands of Americans are seeing larger paychecks, bigger bonuses, and higher pension contributions, and it's all because of the tax cuts and the tax reform. And I want to thank all of the companies that worked so hard to do it. Workers at AT&T, Bank of America, Comcast, Southwest Airlines, American Airlines, and many other companies are receiving bonuses of $1,000 or more. Aflac and others are investing more in employees' 401ks. CVS announced it will hire 3,000 new workers. Boeing, another great company, is investing hundreds of millions of dollars in employee training and infrastructure. More than 60 companies have announced they are raising wages, including many that have voluntarily raised their minimum wage to $15 per hour. And I mean, they did that voluntarily, which many politicians said could only be achieved by government mandate. Investing in the American worker is the most important investment a business will ever make. I want to thank all of these companies for putting their tax savings to the best possible use by creating more jobs and higher wages for the American family. These great results are just the beginning. When the dreams of the American people are unleashed, there is nothing, absolutely nothing we can't achieve. We are going to make America great again, and it's happening a lot faster than anyone thought possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. As he said, this is only the beginning, and we are excited to see the economic growth and optimism continue to soar in 2018. Earlier today, the President hosted Republican senators to talk about responsible immigration reform. He reiterated our view that any action on DACA must come with action on the President's immigration reform principles, which were released last year. These include a physical border wall on the southern border, interior enforcement, which includes more ICE and Border Patrol agents, as well as a crackdown on sanctuary cities, and reforms to our legal immigration system, like ending chain migration and the visa lottery program in favor of a merit-based immigration system. Next week, the President is inviting a bipartisan group of senators to the White House to discuss the next steps on responsible immigration reform and to continue that discussion. And with that, I'll take your questions. Jeff.
Sarah, a follow-up on the Steve Bannon issue. Did White House staff, including Steve, have to sign non-disclosure agreements when they came to work at the White House?
There's an ethics agreement. Beyond that, I can't get into any additional details.
And does the President want to have Steve's support for anti-establishment political candidates going up into the midterm elections?
The President wants all Americans' support. He hopes that every American in this country wants to see us do bigger and better things. That's his focus. He's not trying to single out the support from any one individual, but he wants to bring everybody together to move this country forward. That's what he campaigned on, and that's what we've done over the last year, and that's what we're going to continue to do for the next 7 years. Yeah.
The White House has said there were false statements in this book. The President's lawyer has said there were libelous statements. Could you just give a few examples of things that have been said in this book that are false, that you would like to set the record straight on?
I'm not going to go through every single page of the book, but there are numerous examples of falsehoods that take place in the book. I'll give you one just because it's really easy. The fact that there was a claim that the President didn't know who John Boehner was is pretty ridiculous, considering the majority of you have seen photos, and frankly, several of you have even tweeted out that the President not only knows him, but has played golf with him, tweeted about him. I mean, that's pretty simple and pretty basic. Ages of employees, which would be super easy to fact check, are wrong. Again, there are numerous mistakes, but I'm not going to waste my time or the country's time going page by page talking about a book that's complete fantasy and just full of tabloid gossip, because it's sad, pathetic, and our administration and our focus is going to be on moving the country forward. John?
Thanks a lot, Sarah. I read the cease and desist letter that was sent by the president's lawyers to both Michael Wolff and Henry Holt, the publisher of his book, which seeks to stop the sale of his book. Did the president's lawyers share with the president the idea that this is a prior restraint and that prior restraints are generally unconstitutional?
I'm not sure about specific details of the conversation between the president and his personal attorneys, but I would refer you to them for questions regarding that matter. Jordan?
Does the president believe in the First Amendment? Does he believe in prior restraints such as the one that's contemplated here?
The president absolutely believes in the First Amendment, but as we've said before, the president also believes in making sure that information is accurate before pushing it out as fact when it certainly and clearly is not. Jordan?
What's the president's reaction to the growing number of suggestions, both in this book and in the media, that he's mentally unfit to serve as president?
The same way we have when it's been asked before that it's disgraceful and laughable. If he was unfit, he probably wouldn't be sitting there and wouldn't have defeated the most qualified group of candidates the Republican Party has ever seen. This is an incredibly strong and good leader. That's why we've had so successful 2017 and why we're going to continue to do great things as we move forward in this administration. John?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Two questions. First, the book repeatedly says that the candidate Trump, his family, and the top officials of the campaign did not believe he would be elected. It was the farthest from their mind. You said yesterday you believed in this candidate and felt he would win. Can you name anyone else who said at the time, on the eve of the election, they felt he would win, and did the president himself believe he would not win?
Look, as we've stated many times before, go back and look at some of the interviews, specifically Kellyanne Conway. I know she did several leading up to the days just before the election, saying directly that the president can win and would win. I know there were a number of other campaign officials that echoed those same sentiments. The president, the first lady, his family, they wouldn't have put themselves through that process if, one, they didn't believe they could win, and two, they didn't want to win. This was something they were very committed to and have been committed to since taking office, and will continue to do so over the next 7 years. Again, it is absolutely laughable to think that somebody like this president would run for office with the purpose of losing. If you guys know anything, you know that Donald Trump is a winner, and he's not going to do something for the purpose of not coming out on top and not coming out as a winner. It's just, I mean, that's one of the most ridiculous things, I think, the claims in the book.
My other question is, tomorrow, can we expect a major personnel change? And I particularly ask, is Gary Cohn going to stay where he is?
I have no reason to know of any personnel change whatsoever. Gary has stated he's committed to being here. We just have come off of a very successful win on the tax cut and reform package, which Gary was one of the key leaders of that effort, and we're moving full force ahead into 2018 to make sure we get a lot accomplished. Francesca.
Thank you, Sarah. I wanted to follow up on something you said yesterday. The last time that the president spoke to Steve Bannon was early December, at least to your knowledge, you said. So that's one thing. But secondly, the president said today, I don't talk to Steve Bannon. I don't talk to him. So how much were they in contact from the time that he left the White House to that early December call that you mentioned? And also, how close were they when they were in their White House? One of the claims that was made in the book was that he frequently dined with Mr. Bannon unless he was already in bed.
The book also says that he had been sidelined by April, which I think goes further to indicate that he had very little credibility to give much information, particularly after that point, which most of the book is based after that time frame. Again, this book is mistake after mistake after mistake.
By April, Sarah, were they not close by the time that he left?
I'm not aware that they were ever particularly close. I would certainly say that they've spoken a few times since he left the White House, but it's not like there were regularly scheduled calls or and certainly no meetings between the two of them. Fred.
Thanks, Sarah. This regarding the election commission and the president's tweets that follow that. Does the president on voter ID? Does the president favor a national voter ID?
Look, we're still going to continue to review the best way forward. Just because the Election Commission is no longer in existence, we are going to send the preliminary findings from the Commission to the Department of Homeland Security and make determinations on the best way forward from that point.
And on that, why the DHS instead of DOJ, which would seem to be more of an investigative body on this?
That was the agency that was best determined by the administration, and we're moving forward and letting them take over the process. Trey?
Thanks, Sarah. 2 questions for you. First, does President Trump see marijuana as a state's issue or a federal issue?
The president believes in enforcing federal law. That would be his top priority, and that is regardless of what the topic is, whether it's marijuana or whether it's immigration. The president strongly believes that we should enforce federal law. The move that the Department of Justice has made, which my guess is what you're referencing, simply gives prosecutors the tools to take on large-scale distributors and enforce federal law. The president's position hasn't changed, but he does strongly believe that we have to enforce federal law.
And without getting ahead of the president, the meeting this afternoon with the RNC chairwoman, do you imagine that they will be discussing a potential run by Mitt Romney in Utah? Is this something that the president would like to discuss with Mitt Romney's niece?
Like you said, I'm not going to get ahead of a meeting that hasn't taken place and try to guess what may be discussed. And, you know, maybe we can follow up with that question at a later time. Ashley.
Sarah, it's an incredibly high bar for a public figure to win a libel case, a public figure, especially like the president. So I was hoping you could explain why the president thinks it's an appropriate use of attention and resources to marshal both his West Wing and his legal team against the book's author, the book's publisher, and a former staffer.
In terms of a legal argument, I would refer you to the president's attorneys, but in terms of the merits, I think it's pretty clear. I don't think we have been tiptoeing around our feelings on this. It's completely tabloid gossip full of false and fraudulent claims, and I would refer you to the president's attorneys on what that looks like in the court of law. Noah. Or Brian, sorry. Brian's slow today.
Thank you, Sarah. Will the president go to court to stop the publication of this book?
Again, that's something that I would refer you to the president's attorneys, but our position is very clear that we think it is full of false and fake information.
The book's going to be published on Tuesday. I mean, how far is the president willing to go to prevent this book from being published?
He certainly believes that it shouldn't be, but in terms of the legal process, I would have to refer you to his legal team on that front. Margaret.
Sarah, I know we're talking a lot about Steve Bannon, but he's not the only person quoted in this book. Katie Walsh, who worked for this White House, was quoted on the record extensively.
Who I believe has also put out a statement denying that those quotes are attributed to her.
Is there any kind of action being taken by the White House against any of these individuals? Is there outreach to these individuals who are quoted to verify whether, in fact, they made these statements or not? You know, there are these reports that there are going to be perhaps implications for her potentially being pushed out of groups that work to help support the president from the outside.
I'm not aware of any specific action being taken. I do know that she has come out and said that the quotes were not attributed to her, as have many other people that this has been, that they've been quoted in this book.
Take them at their word and there won't be implications.
Well, I absolutely, particularly people like Secretary Mnuchin, who has pushed back on this, and several others. I think you have to look also at this author's track record in which he's had a real problem with this in the past. And I think that that is something that has certainly laid a foundation for us to make the assumption that he is definitely, this is a practice that he is used to doing.
And no further legal action against any of those individuals?
Not that I'm aware of at this time. Kevin.
Sarah, thanks. Just a couple. I just want to ask you, broadly speaking, what's your level of exhaustion when you have to have this issue out there when there are other policy issues you're trying to get to and trying to communicate to the American people? How do you balance that? And I guess the obvious would be, did you speak to the president specifically about what has been said, or at least has been released about this book?
I have spoken to the president about some of the specifics that have come up. In terms of the level of exhaustion, I'm less concerned with my exhaustion as I am with the people of this country who frankly probably could care less about a book full of lies and would really like to hear more about the booming economy, the crushing of ISIS, all of the great things that are happening in this country, or all of the big problems that we're focused on tackling. I don't think they really care about some trash that an author that no one had ever heard of until today, or a fired employee wants to peddle. This is the focus of this administration, is moving our country forward, and hopefully everybody in this room will join us in that effort and focus on some of the policy components instead of some of the ridiculous lies that we have to spend all of our time in here focused on.
If I could follow on immigration very quickly, is it your impression that something will be done vis-a-vis the wall, and there'll be a grand announcement of some sort that the president would like to make on that?
Again, we'd like to make sure that we have responsible immigration reform, as I said at the front. We'd like to have a deal where we have DACA as well as those priorities and principles that we laid out last year met, and that's the reason that the president is inviting members from the Democrat Party to come over next week so that we can have that discussion and see if we can move the ball forward in that process. Kristen.
Sarah, thank you. As a candidate, President Trump threatened some 20 lawsuits and followed through with 2 of them. So why should Steve Bannon and Michael Wolff be concerned?
I think that regardless of whether or not there's a lawsuit, they should be concerned about peddling fake stories. They should be concerned about putting out information that's not true. They should be concerned about the fact that we're spending all of our time here focused on talking about this instead of things that people in this country care about. I think that's a really sad process, and I think that that should be everyone's concern.
Is the president committed to following through with these lawsuits?
I think that's a question you'd have to talk to his attorneys about, and whether or not that moves forward and what that looks like.
Don't you just run the risk of increasing book sales, though, Sarah? Drawing more attention to this?
I think you guys are the ones that are drawing the attention. Every question basically that I've been asked has to do with that. It's not like I came out here and read excerpts from the book, so I don't think that I can be responsible for the questions that you asked. In fact, if I tried to do that, I'm sure I would certainly be attacked for trying to, because I did that once and it didn't go over very well. Mike, go ahead.
Is the cell phone ban a response to the revelations in this book?
Absolutely not. That's a ridiculous characterization. This is about the security and the integrity of the technology systems here at the White House. This is something that has been in process and in the works for over 6 months, and we were making sure that all of the information and the ability for the government phones to increase their ability for other application so that we can comply with Presidential Records Act. That was a big piece of making sure that this was done. Now that that process is completed, we can move forward, and that'll start next week. Mike.
Can you, how would you describe the president's relationship with the Mercer family?
I'm sorry?
The president's relationship with the Mercer family, how would you describe that?
I believe it's good. I haven't heard otherwise, but I'm not aware of anything specific.
You were eager to call on ESPN to fire one of its sportscasters for criticizing President Trump.
It wasn't just criticizing, it was a little bit different than that.
Well, should Breitbart part ways with Steve Bannon after the comments in these books?
I certainly think that it's something they should look at and consider. Brian?
Thanks. I'd like to drill down on something that Peter asked yesterday, and I profess my ignorance in this, but next week when he goes for his dumb smile,
yeah.
So
I mean, if you want to call yourself ignorant,
I am.
I'm
but
not going to argue.
When he goes for so enlighten me, make me smart. So next week when he goes to his physical, are there mental acuity tests that go along with that, or is it purely physical in nature?
We'll discuss, as I said, when I announced that he was going to be doing the physical. We'll have a readout of that after that is completed, and we'll let you know at that time.
The second question I have for you is, yesterday you said Steve Bannon was entitled to his own opinion, but not his own facts. This administration has said on many occasions that they are entitled to alternative facts. So how is that different with Steve Bannon?
This administration has not said on numerous occasions that there are alternative facts. I know that there was one reference in which they were saying there's basically 2 sides to the story. I think that's very different than completely false information and an opinion. Dave.
Clara, thanks. The president said today that Steve Bannon changed his tune about him last night. Does the president feel that the cease and desist letter had the desired effect on Steve Bannon?
I'm not sure what aspect made him change his tune, but I think that there was certainly a difference in some of the language that he used for this book versus the language that he used last night.
A question on oil drilling, please. Rick Scott, the governor of Florida, is expressing concerns about the administration's new offshore oil drilling plan, which would allow, obviously, drilling on most coastal waters. Can the president afford to cross this important political ally, and what do you plan to say to Governor Scott about the whole plan?
Our goal certainly isn't to cross Governor Scott. We have a great relationship with him. We're going to continue working with him on a number of issues. Just because we may differ on issues from time to time doesn't mean that we can't still have an incredibly strong and good relationship. We'll continue those conversations with him and hopefully all come to an agreement. I'll take one last question. Jim?
You were calling the Michael Wolff book a book full of lies. Didn't this White House give Michael Wolff all the access that he wanted?
Absolutely not. In fact, there are probably more than 30 requests for access to information from Michael Wolff that were repeatedly denied, including within that at least 24 requests of him asking to have an interview with the president, which he never did. He never discussed this book with the president. And to me, that would be the most important voice that you could have if you were looking to write a book about an individual, would be to have some time with him. He never did. He was repeatedly denied that, I think because we saw him for what he was, and there was no reason for us to waste the president of the United States time. And frankly, since we were unable, I'll let you have one follow-up.
Okay, I appreciate that. Should the letter from the president's lawyers aimed at Steve Bannon and aimed at the publisher be interpreted as a threat from the United States government, from this administration, to not publish this book?
It's not from the United States government. It's from the president's personal attorney, and I think it is very clear what its purpose is. And there's nothing to add beyond that. If you have specifics on that, I would refer you to the president's attorneys. Thanks so much, guys.
That was the White House press briefing with Sarah Sanders. And if you were looking for a press briefing about one topic, and that topic being an upcoming book about President Trump, you would be happy, because I would say, if I had to guess, probably around 30 or 40 questions asked in that press briefing, and probably a good, 90% of them were about the book. I was kind of hoping, some big issues out there. I think there was one question on the marijuana Jeff Sessions announcement today, which is a huge thing. Only one question on that. One question on... There were no questions. I didn't hear any questions on North Korea. I didn't hear any questions on Iran. Huge things going on around. Nothing about that. There was one question on some other topic I thought was important. Or the oil drilling. Somebody asked one question. But basically, almost all the questions were on the book about President Trump upcoming book. Now, personally, I don't editorialize that much on the air. I got to say, personally, in terms of importance to Americans, for example, take the marijuana announcement. So Jeff Sessions today announced that he was going to reverse some previous I think it reversed a previous Obama policy on not enforcing certain laws on marijuana, which basically had the effect of states could legalize marijuana, and it could be legal within the states, even though it's federally prohibited, and the federal government wouldn't go into states and try to arrest people that the state had, for doing stuff that the state had legalized. But it's a bit confusing from what Jeff Sessions today is. The federal government going to start, going to states like Colorado that have legalized marijuana and arresting people for using marijuana and selling it? It's unclear right now. That's a really important issue. That's going to affect a lot of Americans in a lot of states, whatever you think about it. And that there's one question on that and 30 or 25 or whatever questions on the book. I don't know if that really matches the importance to Americans. Is the book, 20 to 25 times more important to Americans than whether the federal government's going to enforce federal marijuana law in states that have legalized marijuana. I don't know if the book is 25 times more important than the marijuana stuff. That's just one issue. And how about Iran, which Iran I don't think was even asked about. Anyways, that's my little editorializing. But enough of that. We want to hear what you thought about the press briefing. This is the post show for the White House press briefing. This is Right Side Broadcasting. We are covering it live. We want to hear what you thought. What did you think about the press briefing? Write to me at @Lookner on Twitter, @LOOKNER. I will read your comment on the air. Real quick, thanks to our moderators in the chat room who've been moderating. Pam C., Guinevere, thank you for being there, and Real Frank, and also Common Sense and Gleno on the website. And we are viewer supported, so if you like that you have a place to talk about this briefing, and you don't have to turn it on CNN or MSNBC or Fox, where they're just going to kind of yell at you and have a lot of people screaming. If you like having a place that's going to read your comments on the air, we are viewer supported, so please consider making a donation to Right Side Broadcasting. If you want to donate, you can go to the bottom of the YouTube chat, click on the $ at the bottom of the YouTube chat. Looks like a little square $sign. Or you can go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. So want to hear from you. What'd you think of the press briefing? Write to me at @Lookner on Twitter. Let me see if I have any comments here yet. Let's see. Joseph Riley says, no questions about Rosenstein's meeting with Paul Ryan or a timeline on proceedings there. So that's something Joseph Riley would have liked to have seen asked about. Reagan Better says no questions on Hillary Clinton's fire at her house or the Northeast snowstorm. Now, I'll say this. The Northeast snowstorm is certainly an important thing going on today. I could have seen that being asked about, but it was not asked about. Let's see. Syntax Error says, but the D.C. media has said they want to do a better job at covering the forgotten Americans in the middle of the country. So I think what the Syntax Error is claiming that the questions they were asking, aren't really important to the forgotten Americans in the middle of the country. Gonzoville, I had sent out a tweet saying that people were basically just asking about the book, and there was no questions I had seen about Iran or North Korea. And Gonzoville replied, so you're saying a potential nuclear conflict is more important than a palace intrigue book? Let's see here. Superhero Zero writes in, to watch these press briefings is sad anymore. The news media acts like they all work for TMZ and look for gotcha moments rather than trying to get the facts and follow facts like real reporters in reporting is done. Max Thunderborn writes in, glad she slammed them. Trump Publican writes in, true colors of the liberal press. I love the press secretary. She is like Trump. She gets punched. She punches back even harder. Gary responded to I had posted, like, are they going to ask any other questions besides book questions today? And he wrote back, that's because they're parasites. Hank Hill's comment on the press briefing was, it's annoying AF. Sky 2 writes, the mainstream mockery group, as some are utterly embarrassing. Stefan writes in, they are all, now some of these are responses to my tweets about the briefing, by the way, just to be clear. Stefan responded to my tweet, they are all in the running for the fake news awards next week. President Trump said he's going to give out fake news awards next week. Steve Grasha, or Fakest Media Awards, I can't remember what it was called. Steve Grasha says it's absolutely nauseating. Daily Driver says, I thought this press briefing was a complete waste of time. I did like where she said the press should be focusing on all the positive things and not the fake news by a fired employee. Now they'll go back to Trump's taxes. So we want to hear from you. What did you think about this press briefing? Write to me on Twitter @Lookner, @LOOKNER. Let me know what you think about this. And let me tell you some of the things that were said during the briefing. So many questions on the book. So many questions on the book. She said, now Sarah Huckabee Sanders she said about the book, she said it's complete fantasy. She said there are numerous examples of falsehoods in the book. She said it's full of tabloid gossip. She was asked, well, what else did I want to say here? What else did I write down that I thought was important to mention? Now, I will say on the marijuana question, she said the president believes in enforcing federal law. That is regardless of what the topic is, whether it's marijuana or it's immigration. So there is this question of, are we going to see... The thing I'm talking about the marijuana thing, just so you know, is this. Legalized... Oops, I don't want to do that. Let's do it this way. Hang on one second. Legalized marijuana use threatened as Sessions rescinds Obama-era directive that eased federal enforcement. And so today, Jeff Sessions rescinded several Obama-era directives that discouraged enforcement of federal marijuana laws in states that had legalized the substance. So there are federal marijuana laws, and the federal government has basically just chosen not to enforce them in states that legalize marijuana. And now there's a question, now that Attorney General Jeff Sessions has rescinded some of these directives, does that mean that, so look, it says, like, the move potentially paves the way for the federal government to crack down on the burgeoning pot industry, though the precise impact remains to be seen. So we don't know if, is the federal government going to start prosecuting people in states that have legalized marijuana? Marijuana was already illegal under U.S. law. So that's an important question. And I know Sarah Sanders did say the president believes in enforcing federal law, that is regardless of what the topic is, whether it's marijuana or it's immigration. And but still a big question whether will there be this big conflict between the states. California just started a couple days ago with the new year. They legalized marijuana, and it just became recreational marijuana became legal in California a few days ago. So could we see federal officials prosecuting people in California and in Colorado where marijuana is legal for using it, for selling it? But we didn't hear that much about it today, and in no small part because there was so much being asked about the book. She also said, Sarah Huckabee Sanders said, people of this country could probably care less about the book. She also said this is an author no one had ever heard from today, but no one had ever heard of before today. And let's see. She also said that Breitbart should consider firing Steve Bannon for what he said in the book, because she believes it's false. All right, if you have thoughts on the press briefing, write to me at Lookner on Twitter, at Lookner. Mita writes in, why was the Election Integrity Council closed? Why was this not discussed? Oh, that's interesting. I don't think that was asked about in the briefing. So the president had appointed this council to look into election fraud, and then he disbanded the commission yesterday. Let me see if I can pull this up on the screen here. Here it is. Trump signs order disbanding voter fraud commission. And the White House said that they blamed the decision, as it says in the subheadline there, they blamed the decision on some states that refuse to provide voter information. So White House spokeswoman Sarah Huckabee Sanders says that rather than engage in endless legal battles at taxpayer expense to get this information the states are not providing, Trump has signed an order to dissolve the commission. So that's what they say, is that they dissolved the commission because the states weren't cooperating with it. Now, I've heard some people speculate online that, I believe there were some court actions that some people had taken to try to get messages people in the commission had sent each other to be revealed publicly, and they were speculating that maybe he shut down this commission because he didn't want those messages to be revealed. President Trump didn't. I don't know. I'm just saying this was some speculation that was out there. But this was not asked about, as far as I'm aware, in the press briefing, which you think would be asked about. But there were about 30 questions on the book. A good question, Mita. Power of USA says, talking about this book keeps the news fake. I wish more on voter ID laws was talked about. Thanks for writing in. All right, Newsmax says, no questions on person trying to kill Trump in Utah. I hadn't heard about a person trying to kill Trump in Utah. That's news to me. This is a story from CNN. Utah man accused of threatening to kill Trump. It says he was indicted. What does it say? It quoted him as saying, "I woke up and decided to kill the president today." I don't even know where this was when he said that. It doesn't seem to say here that he actually did anything. Oh, here it is. Dominguez made the threat on Trump's life on December 4th, 2017. Trump visited Utah that day. So on that day that Trump visited Utah, I guess this guy said that he had threatened to kill Trump verbally, and then he was observed. He also threatened to hurt people at a movie complex, and was observed in the area of the theater, and police officers took him into custody. So anyways, that came out yesterday. I hadn't seen that. Thanks for letting me know about that. Tom Ropp writes in, today's press briefing was the best proof I have seen on why the administration should stop these daily attack fests by the mainstream media. What a joke. David Ragor says, White House press briefing, ... The news is all about a book full of garbage. Seriously? El Generico says they don't care about world events. They only care about trying to bring down real Donald Trump. Al Park says the legality of marijuana as a state versus legal jurisdiction is opening a can of worms. This and immigration laws will drag into and beyond 2020. B. Richards writes, it's a privilege to be in these briefings. This should show Americans there's no news in mainstream media. I think if you behave like this as a reporter, your tag should be taken until you can act more responsible. Lauren McDuffie says, no questions even about what Sanders started off with, such as the future border meetings. Oh, also, President Trump, there was a video they played where President Trump was talking about the economy. And they didn't ask about that, I don't think. Now, I actually missed what Sarah Sanders talked about at the beginning. I was getting done with covering the winter storm, so I got to the press briefing a little bit late. My coverage of it got to my attention on it got there a little bit late because I was ending that stream. But yeah, there was nothing. If she did talk about that, there was nothing about that asked about that I can recall. Joshua writes, and very worried about this Jeff Sessions reversal. As a sufferer of PTSD and a user of cannabis for it, this is a very dark day. So as I mentioned, this is whether or not the federal government starts enforcing federal government marijuana law in states that have legalized it is very important to a lot of Americans, because a lot of Americans do use marijuana. That was I think there was only one question about it, and I don't think we got any real more news about it from Sarah Sanders' answer about it. She said President Trump wants to enforce the law, but that's not that specific. So that is an important issue, and personally, I thought it could have been asked about more at the briefing in terms of the importance of it, but it wasn't. So we'll see. We'll keep an eye on what happens with it. Thanks, Josh, for writing in. Steamy Raimon says the mainstream media who was at the press briefing are paid ankle biters. David Ragor says, why prosecute for marijuana when you ignore the corruption in D.C.? Seems like they are going after the low-hanging fruit of the common people. Sky 2 says, I'd be real disappointed if our president destroyed a burgeoning, very successful industry, decriminalized marijuana. Pastor Bob Celeste says, Steve, please see if you can find out what Betsy DeVos is doing, if anything, about vouchers for parents so they can get their kids out of the public kitty kennels. I nominate Maine's Tabloid 8 for a fake news award. Thank you for writing in, Pastor Bob Celeste. I don't really know much about what's going on with the voucher issue, Pastor Bob Celeste. I'll have to do some research. Reagan Better says, no questions on DACA. President spent 1 hour today on that topic. I've been covering the storm all morning, so I don't even know if Trump, what he did with DACA today, because I've just been in stormland all day. Let me catch up here. Sam Miller sent in something. Sam Miller sent in a little meme. I'll show it to you. Sky 2 writes, the stock market is raging. Many of those stocks are from marijuana industry. Are many of them from the marijuana industry, Sky 2? I'm not sure about that. I don't know. I'm not aware of it being many of the stocks. Darth Vader. Oh, this is Darth Vader. Sam Miller sent me this from Darth Vader, and it says, meanwhile on the East Coast, where we are going to the store. Need anything? A lot of flooding in Massachusetts actually going on from the storm. Pretty bad there. So we're on the air here. We're taking your comments on the White House press briefing. If you have comments, what did you think of the briefing, which was mostly on the book coming out about President Trump, or supposedly coming out, although President Trump has lawyers, his lawyer or lawyers sent a letter to the author and the book company telling them not to come out with the book. Then in the that was, I think, last night or this morning, and then in the press briefing, Sarah Sanders was asked if the president would take legal action to stop the book from coming out, and she didn't really commit on that answer. She wasn't really committal either way. Hang on, what was I going to mention here? Oh, so if you want to write to us on @Lookner on Twitter, write to me at @Lookner on Twitter. I'll read your comment on the air. Again, thanks to our moderators who are working in the chat rooms to moderate our chats. And if you like our coverage, if you like having this kind of alternative to turn to for your coverage of the news, please consider donating. Your donations, that's how we stay on the air. It's your donations that keep us on the air. So if you'd like to support Right Side Broadcasting, go to the bottom of the YouTube chat, click on the little dollar sign at the bottom of the YouTube chat, or go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube so you get notified whenever we're coming on the air with breaking news. So we covered the snowstorm today, right before this broadcast. So subscribe to us on YouTube, hit the notifications bell. Also, you can follow us on Facebook, Right Side Broadcasting, and on Twitter at RSB Network. And CEO Joe Seals, who's producing this broadcast as well and doing a great job producing, he is on Twitter at Joe Seals, Seales. B. Richards writes, they didn't even ask about the stock market. DACA, this goes to show you they don't want to know about the good things the president is doing. Now, they also didn't ask, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff in Congress that Congress is going to be dealing with in the next couple of weeks. A budget deal, for example, DACA perhaps, a wall, and really no questions on that stuff. Susan Day writes in, all about the book. Frankly, we do care about this. Speaking of ridiculous lies, mirror, mirror. So actually, Susan Day is saying, I think that she liked that so much of it was about the book. Thanks for writing in, Susan. Let's see here. Doggy Fashions writes in, President has to enforce all federal laws because when it comes to enforcing immigration, there can't be other laws the rogue states are allowed to ignore. So what you're saying, Doggy Fashions, is you're saying if the president allows states to not, if president allows states to legalize marijuana, even though it's federally prohibited, that then that'll undercut their wanting to enforce federal immigration law, right? And rather than letting the states, have things like sanctuary cities and stuff that the federal government thinks undermines, it goes against federal immigration law. Let's see here. Okay, I think I'm almost caught up on your messages. Let me just double check. Yes. Okay, last call for comments. If you have comments about the press briefing, get them in soon because we're going to end this stream pretty soon. Saw an interesting report today. I need to read more about this. I just saw this a little bit a little while ago, but I've been on the air all day. President, according to Albo, breaking news, and Associated Press reported it too, Trump administration moves to sharply expand offshore drilling, including in Pacific Ocean for first time in decades. So I need to read some more about that. Susan Day says, they are not press briefings anymore. It is Sarah's lying sideshow sad. Chocolate cake, anyone? So Susan Day is not a fan of Sarah Huckabee Sanders during the briefings. Max Thunderbone writes in, I feel as if the mainstream media isn't asking important enough questions nor topics, not to mention dead-end questions that they know Sarah Sanders can't reply to. I understand they're looking for ratings, but this is a nation, not a TV show. Thank you, Max, for writing in. All right, I think, let's see. Hey, Sky2 sent me a list of marijuana stocks. Okay, Sky2, I see your list. Thank you. What I can't tell, though, is you said the stocks were up because of these marijuana stocks. And now, I don't think any of these are in the Dow Jones Industrial, so they wouldn't be there. And then I don't even know, like, if NASDAQ is up or Standard & Poor's is up, I don't really know how much of a percentage of these, like Standard and S&P 500 is 500 stocks, isn't it? So it's a 500 large company. So my point was these stocks could be going up today, but if the stock indexes are up like NYSE and Standard & Poor's and NASDAQ, I'm not sure that these would, well, especially with S&P 500 and NYSE, these stocks would not contribute to that. So I wasn't thank you for this list of stocks, but just to clarify what I was saying is if the stock market was up, that wouldn't necessarily be because, and probably wouldn't be because the marijuana stocks are up. But at the same time, I do appreciate the list of stocks. And there's many here. You sent me a list of about, how many stocks here did you send me? 1, 2, 3. Looks like about 40 or so. So there are a lot of marijuana stocks. That's helpful. Thank you for sending that in, Sky2. See, I asked, and you sent it right in. Thank you. And Mike wrote in, he wanted me to show this. This is from our viewer, Mike. And Mike wanted me to show this article that came out today from the Washington Examiner saying Justice Department reopens Hillary Clinton email investigation. So feel free to go read that if you want to at the Washington Examiner. That's a little news tip from our viewer, Mike. David Smart writes in, I'm in Connecticut and the snow has stopped for the moment, but more on the way 4 inches so far. People were writing me before because we were on the air covering the winter storm. And I think, and Cheyenne King says, Steve, I'd watch the White House briefings if you were front row live streaming it. I don't think they'd let us do that. I think they'd force us to use their one feed there. But thank you for writing in. Okay, I think we are going to, I think I've gotten to all your messages. And I think we're going to wrap it up. Okay, we're going to wrap up our coverage of today's White House press briefing. Really appreciate you joining us, making Right Side your choice for the press briefing. And thanks to Joe Seals for producing today. Very much appreciate it. And for being the CEO of Right Side. Thanks to Guinevere and Barbara and Rio Frank and our other moderators, Common Sense and Gleno on the website for working hard moderating. Thanks to all of you for sending in your comments. And everybody who watched the broadcast today, thank you. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Click the notifications bell so you get notified when we're coming on the air. On Twitter, we're at RSB Network. I am on Twitter at Lookner. I post about breaking news all the time, even when I'm not on the air, so follow me at Lookner. Follow Joe Seals at Joe Seals. Follow SEALES. Follow our head moderator, Jude Seals, at RSBN Moderator. Follow our head music guy, our only music guy, Jacob Seals, at Jacob RSBN Music. And we're on Facebook, Right Side Broadcasting. What else? And that's it. That's going to wrap up the coverage for today. Thank you for saying thanks in the chat room. People saying thanks. We got Janine W. is in there. Who else is in there? Summer Sunrise is in there. Oh, Mad Mike says he was the one who wrote that message. Thank you, Mad Mike. Gwen Cat, one of We the People, CJ, Winning Mike, Miss Rob Mob. Thanks for the donation earlier, Miss Rob Mob. Oh, did I mention Miss Rob Mob donated earlier? That's what keeps us on the air. If you like our coverage, please consider donating. We would go off the air if we don't get enough donations. So if you want to donate, go to the bottom of the YouTube chat, click on the $sign at the bottom of the YouTube chat, or go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. Thank you, Light Switch. Thank you. Oh, JC is there. Hi, JC. Who else? Joe Easley. Thank you. Kiki Art. Thank you. John PS30 is there. Hi, John. And Thomas Papa, Will Redding. D.W. Bigley's there. Hi, D.W. Bigley. And everybody else there in the chat room. Okay, we're going to wrap it up for now. If there's breaking news later today, we'll come on the air and cover it. So keep an eye out for us. But for now, I'm Steve Lookner for Joe Seals and for everybody else at Right Side Broadcasting. Have a great day. Stay safe if you're in the Stay safe if you're in the Northeast and on the East Coast. And we will see you soon here at RSBN.